Okay, well, okay, yeah. Now Monique always says to me, push yourself, challenge yourself. And you say that to me a lot, don't you? And, I'm not bitter about it. Now, diet's always, it plays a big role, doesn't it, for people on the spectrum, a huge role. For many different reasons, sensory-wise, self-perception. And I remember, I've always been quite slim, but I remember when I was, I don't know, 11, 12, around about that age, and I started to gain a bit of weight. And I was really drawn towards, fatty foods like that very nicely represents my diet at that time. And I remember this one trip to McDonald's, and I said, well, I'd given them a list of what I wanted. And there was 2 Big Macs, 2 hamburgers, a large portion of fries, apple pie, Diet Coke, and a milkshake. I mean, it's like a game of supermarket sweet, that, isn't it? It's just absolutely crazy. But at the time, I got a lot of comfort out of that. Out of the texture, out of the taste, and I think a lot of younger people with autism, are quite unfairly bullied. And I was no different, and I think I found quite a lot of comfort in sort of eating that fatty food. It was what I would call a coping strategy. Now, as a man, my food routine is quite interesting because it depends on where I am as to what I'll eat. So, for example, if I'm in a flat and on my own, it'll be very rigid. It could be very sort of plain sorts of foods. But if I'm at my mum's, for example, I'm very open to a roast dinner. Let's be honest, it'd be rude not to, wouldn't it? There on this sort of day. You guys know what I'm saying. You've got to have a bit of beef. And if I'm out in town, I will go to a restaurant. Because clearly you can't sort of cook up some Patty can't sort of say, "I go to the kitchen and cook up some penne, please." I mean, it's a little bit, it's a bit weird. So it very much depends on where I am, so I'll eat. Yeah, I've always been, like I mentioned, always been very slim. Always been very slim. And it's something that I've always really struggled with. And I think only until recently have I realised, I sort of thought, even sort of being very slim, I thought, God almighty, I actually think I'm overweight. And I think what's really nice, I've mentioned this word development as I've gone through, and I think it's also important to have good people around you, people who make you think. And I was made to think about this by an individual, and I thought, well, actually, in layman's terms, I'm 9 stone 9, and that's not big. And sometimes it just takes a person to make you think a little bit differently, to open up your mind. Now, talking about this is going to be a challenge. Hummus. I already go there, you know. I've even put a picture up there for you and everything. It's just like, if I ever meet the person who invented hummus, they are for it. Seriously, they can better run. This isn't just sort of like one of these irrational phobias of food stuff. It's a traumatic memory of taking a spoonful of hummus that looked like something I can't really repeat, putting it in my mouth, and just having to literally run upstairs to the toilet. It's the most vile, rancid texture that I've ever eaten. Ugh, horrible. Ugh. But for me, I think, sort of Monique's mantra, one of my goals, I think, for the future is to have another spoonful of hummus. And I think that's going to be an interesting day, ladies and gentlemen. But I think these things have to be aimed for. I think if you're afraid of something, I think you need to face it, you need to challenge it. Because it'd be really nice to stand in front of an audience like yourselves and say, well actually I used to really quite fear hummus, but not anymore. That would be lovely. Okay, a little bit of the sensory stuff. Now, that teddy bear, he's actually mine. And wow, yeah, he went through a lot with me. I have to say he was very appropriately named Teddy Bear, very creative. My brother sort of called his first animal, his first soft toy monster, the rabbit. You can see a little bit of a difference between the way we thought. Yeah, he was, for many, many years, he was my best mate. I remember coming home to him after a tough day at school, and I'd just talk to him, I'd speak to him and sort of tell him what was causing me problems in my world, and it was lovely because I knew that I wasn't going to be judged, and I knew he listened well of sorts, and it was just so much comfort out of that relationship. He is essentially an inanimate object, yes, but there was also, I used to look at him as though he was almost real, I had real feelings. And for me, I remember even up until about the age of 20, oh goodness, 21, 22, I would still take him to bed. And that's not something I feel ashamed of, because clearly that's what I needed at the time. So why deny yourself that? Because maybe in society it'd be thought of as weird. And naturally in time, I felt, I've matured enough now. I don't need that extra layer of comfort anymore. So that was really important that was an important step. So I think as well it's important that you don't want to be 40 years old and taking a teddy bear, do you? I mean, really. But for me it helped when it helped. And I still have him somewhere. But yeah, I spoke a little bit about food. Again, back to the development side of things. As I've gotten older, I have been willing to try new foods, which is actually quite exciting. For example, a couple of years ago I tried swordfish. Never eaten swordfish before, didn't know what to expect. But I've got a good one. It's just come to my mind. I was invited over to a couple of friends. They sort of made me like a 3-course meal. Magic, isn't it? 3 wonderful words, that 3-course meal. It just makes you feel wonderful. But I remember for the first course, my heart sank because they'd made samosas. Love samosas. You can't go wrong with a samosa, can you? But this samosa had beetroot in it. Clearly you found beetroot over there. But yeah, I've never tried beetroot before, ever in my life. And I'm in a situation of like, oh my God, okay, these people have gone out their way to make me food. And I'm just going to stand here and say, look, beetroot? Don't want it. No. I sat back, I sat down with them, and I ate what was in front of me. I have to say, I didn't enjoy it, but I don't think that's the point. Again, it's getting back to pushing yourself. And actually, I think appreciating the fact that somebody went to that trouble and understanding that that is actually more important than saying, no, I don't want that. So I thought that was quite cool. Yeah, auditory sensitivities, again, for myself, goodness, I have very sensitive hearing. Very, very useful when somebody's opening a packet of biscuits a couple of doors down. Okay? Someone's opening a packet of hobnobs on it, take it home, honestly. You can't open a packet of biscuits without them being there. So it is really useful. But on the other side of it, it can be quite difficult, especially when you're living in something like a flat. Because if somebody's got a television on downstairs or upstairs, it's quite distressing. Because you're hearing your own television, you've got someone else's that might as well just be right next to your ear. And it's just, the sound of your own television almost becomes distorted. So it's like you're struggling to hear what you're actually watching. So I think you can understand the frustration. And one of the really puzzling things is, as I've gotten older, I've become more sensitive to touch when I'm stressed. It's not something I had when I was a boy. As I got older, it's something that just seems to have evolved. And I'm very much a person, I like a good handshake. Who doesn't like a good handshake, you know? When you sort of have a right meaty one, you know, it feels really satisfying, doesn't it? But also, you know, I'm not afraid to, you know, hug people. You know, why not? You know, of course, you're not going to go down to, I don't know, Jim down the road who you've spoken to once in your life and give him a hug. A bit awkward. But it's like, you've got mates, you know, and people, and I feel sort of quite comfortable just to give them a hug. And that's cool when I'm calm, that's all good. Really, really good. But when I'm stressed, if somebody just sort of touches me, you are going to get a reaction. It's one layer of sensory processing too much at that moment. It's like having to deal with the trigger, I'm having to deal with coping with that trigger, the heightened anxiety. And if somebody just comes along and gives you a tap on the hand, you're going to be like, wow, you know, that's quite startling. It doesn't just feel like a touch, it almost feels like somebody's hurting you. So, for me, that's been quite interesting to see as I've gotten older. And again, I think people sort of point towards the negatives of people with autism. But one of the really cool things is I know that the way I think helps me when I'm in a crisis, or when not necessarily when I'm in a crisis, but when other people around me are in a crisis. And I'm going to share something with you all. 5 years ago, my father died quite suddenly. And obviously I think for any family, anybody, whoever you are, wherever you're from, it's a difficult thing to deal with, isn't it, you know? But this is where my logical thinking came to its own. I don't necessarily run on the same level of emotion as people. I like to call it different emotion. And I am the person you would want around in a situation like that. Because I'm thinking, right, okay, what needs to be done? How do we need to do it? What's the time frame? And also, because I'm balanced, I'm calm, I'm able to support other people through their sort of difficult period as well. And for me that was, you know, quite, it's almost sadistic, but it was quite nice to be able to offer something back to my family, to be able to give them that emotional support. And for me it just sort of, it's one of those things that almost blasts through these autism myths that we hear about, you know, people with autism aren't empathetic, you know, or they can't sort of give comfort to other people. For me it just absolutely blows holes in it. I do like dispelling those autism myths, let me tell you. So yeah, we've got a couple of bars. Yeah, I did that deliberately. I just think that's a really nice photo that exemplifies friendship. When you see a cat and a dog, two creatures that are supposed to be at each other's throats, just so comfortable together, so at ease. And I just think that, for me, personifies friendship. And it takes me very nicely onto the next subject. I spoke a bit about social understanding earlier, and I remember being a kid, but even actually into my adult life. And I could not understand why in God's name people would go to the pub to socialise. I mean, why would you do that? Why? Possibly, go to the pub, get drunk, fall in the gutter. I mean, seriously, I couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand what we were gaining. And I was quite happy. I'm thinking, I'm a lucky one here. I'm sat home on my PlayStation. I'm loving life. I can't understand why everybody's doing that. Like I said to you guys, as I've gotten older, and that understanding has slowly come, I'm actually looking at it and I think that actually it's really important. Those interactions with people are fundamental to how we function as human beings. We need that social contact. We thrive off that social contact. I'm sure if you guys, you do a week at work, yeah? You want to have a bit of fun on weekends. You want to be around people who make you feel positive. You don't want to be sat in front of a piece of a Jeremy Carly show, do you? Or sat in front of the television all weekend, just sort of feeling that that's enough. And what's so nice about being around people, I think we enjoy the banter, don't we? We enjoy the building of relationships. We enjoy really taking the mick out of each other and sharing experiences. I think that slowly is something that I've come to understand. And I take you back to the meal, the banter across that table was epic. It was absolutely brilliant. And for me, that's what's important. That's the difference between sitting at home feeling almost sorry for people who are out socialising and wanting to be part of it myself. It's having that understanding. It's understanding why there's a need for it. Now this is an interesting one. It's always been a challenge to process what people tell me with regards to tasks. And I'm sort of there and I'm trying. I remember I was at an ex-girlfriend's house and she was trying to put a tarpaulin up in the backyard. I have no idea why, but there was a reason for it. And I remember just I knew I should have been doing something, and people had asked me to help, but the instructions weren't put in a way which I could understand. I was about 23 at the time, and I was stood there and I was really panicking. People were sort of starting to say, "Come on, John, help out." But I wanted to help, but people hadn't told me how to help. They hadn't put it across to me in a way of which I could understand or I could process. And what I needed, certainly at that point, was step-by-step instruction. And I needed other people around me just to have that little bit of patience and understanding, to know that if it didn't go the first time, or the second time, that they'd be patient enough to just speak to me a third time about it. Really, really important. Now I do have, as well, friends on the autism spectrum. I do. But I don't actually look at them like that. They are just my friends. That's what they are. And we had, there was could have been an incident a couple of months ago, and they wanted to go to an all-you-can-eat buffet. And I have to say, I can't think of anything worse. Anything worse than sitting down there, sort of a packed, cramped restaurant, having to go up and get your own food, and it's like, for me, it's just not something I enjoy. I don't enjoy that style of eating. And I knew I was something to it. But I also thought, right, it's something that they should still be able to do. If without me, I don't want to say, right, we're not going there, we're going here. Because it's not fair. It's not fair. And it's that learned way of thinking. As I've sort of gotten older, I've slowly begun to understand that just because something doesn't work for me, doesn't mean it doesn't work for everyone else. So it's about understanding that. And I said to them, okay guys, here's what we'll do. We'll go to the pub, right, the pub, can't go wrong. We'll have a sit down, we'll have a couple of drinks, I'll head off, and you guys can go to the all-you-can-eat. And for me that was a moment where I thought, wow, actually, John, you have come a long way. That was a real light bulb moment for me, because everybody won. Whereas if I just sort of stamp my feet and say, no, we're going to Bella Italia or wherever, it wouldn't have been fair to them. So it's about understanding things from other people's point of view. Okay, we should put the very random pictures, isn't it? So picked off of Google Images. I mean, you must be looking at that and thinking, what the thing is he put in front of us? Seriously. This is a picture of a tunnel, quite clearly, and I think it's a really good picture to emphasise speed and acceleration. And that fits in very nicely with this. I obviously mentioned delayed acceleration at the start. I'd suggest about September last year, I entered quite an extreme phase of accelerated development, which lasted for about 5 months. And I'm just going to run through these with you guys. Comforters became distressing. Now, what I mean by comforters is television, PC, games consoles, that sort of thing. Things that got me through the day for years and years. And all of a sudden, I didn't want to play these things anymore. I didn't want to be at home watching television. And this was really confusing. I couldn't understand why this was happening. There was no gratification anymore. There was no feeling of escapism. And I just couldn't understand. I knew that for myself, I wanted to be around people. And that in itself, when you've felt that you needed to hide away for 29 years, it's to be hit with that is quite a large thing to deal with. Opening my mouth, absolutely. I tell you, up until last year, sounds a bit ironic for someone who's doing a bit of public speaking, but I really found it difficult to open my mouth. Really, really difficult. It's like the words were there, but I couldn't open my mouth to get them out. And it's almost like a feeling of helplessness because you've got something to add, but you feel like you can't add it. And every second that you're sitting there wanting to speak, needing to speak, but you can't, you're getting more and more anxious and you feel more and more useless. And this is, again, one of the real positives of having this period of accelerated development, because I now find that it's a lot easier for me to open my mouth and speak to people and give opinions in meetings around large groups of people. To be able to do that, I think, is something that I think certain people take for granted, but to be able to do that is, goodness, it's liberating. It's liberating. Understanding banter. You mentioned the banter around the dinner table with friends. Okay, really, it's only since about September last year that I've slowly begun to understand banter, that I've gotten it, that I understand that people aren't sort of saying, criticising me or having a go. It's actually just a bit of a laugh, a bit of fun. And that's really cool. That's helped with socialising, which has been really key. Exercise. Now, I tell you what, I don't know if you guys are like me, right? When you see these idiots jogging down the road, 7 o'clock at night, and I'm in my nice warm car and thinking, what are you doing? Seriously. Well, I've become one of those idiots. Oh, yes. Oh, dear, yeah. People go past me in their cars now and think, what is he doing? But I have to say, I started running, and I'm training for a half marathon as well. And I run 9 miles the other day, and it's just, instead of like sitting in front of the PlayStation, that has now become an integral part of my life, and it's so much healthier. It's so much healthier, so much more beneficial, I think, to my mind and to my perception of the world around me. And I think more often, than anything else, it gets a person out and involved with other people. So that's been huge. Education, another one. Huge. I've always been really afraid. I left school at 14 without any qualifications or sitting my GCSEs. And it's taken me 15 years to be able to try education again. But at the moment I am studying for my English and Maths GCSE with a couple of home tutors. And I just see that as part of the process to getting back into mainstream learning. So again, very, very, very exciting. I'm organising a charity skydive as well. A year ago, I can tell you guys now that I would not have been able to do that. Would not have been able to do it. And this is what Monique always says about challenging yourself. You've got a lot to answer for, you know that. So
I have nothing to do with the skydive. We've taken out insurance for the company just in case, because he's going to be doing the skydive. So we've sorted out.
She's not nervous, honestly.
Right.
But yeah, I could have just gone up there, put myself in and done it. But I think it's good to challenge yourself. And I'm leading a team of 15 to do it. And I can tell you that's been stressful to organise. But it's at that moment when we're there on the day and we've done it and we are celebrating as a group of people who have achieved something really quite special. For me, that's what it's about. It's about that moment. So that's, again, really, really exciting. Obviously going into business with Monique, pretty life-changing. My wife will never do the same again, let me tell you. But no, it's been an amazing experience. I'm also, with another charity, helping to coach young people with autism to play football. It's again, isn't it? It's using that passion to do something really good and really positive with it. Very, very, very cool. Okay, yeah, and the whole process of going through those 5 months, I think everybody continues to develop. It's different levels, different speeds, different potentialities that we all develop as people. And it has been really positive. It was a positive experience, very difficult. There were points where there was so much at once. I literally resembled a 5-year-old child who was not able to communicate with anything other than sound, noise. So that was just part of it. And I knew to get through this, I always felt I was going to come out of the tunnel at the other side. Okay. Now this looks like a random photo, isn't it? I mean, seriously. But this is actually, it's actually a really, really poignant photo to me. Last time I threw overarm, right, I was about, I've been early 20s, and I've never been able to throw overarm. Never been able to. I'd always sort of had quite an awkward, jerky motion in my arm, and whatever I was throwing would literally land a couple of feet in front of me, really embarrassing. And it was a couple of months ago, and I didn't realise the sly dog Monique had taken this photograph, let me tell you. But this photo was the first time that I ever realised I could throw something over on, and I was just there throwing stones into the beach, and it was so therapeutic. And I had just a smile on my face because it's one of those little moments in life, isn't it? An achievement. And it's often the little things that make you stop and think, wow, I've done this, I've achieved this, I've made a step forward. And it's when you get a collective of those little achievements you actually make quite large leaps forward. So that was it was just quite an incredible day, I think. Really quite incredible. Okay, so again, just a really massive thank you guys. It has been a pleasure to speak in front of you. InAll are available for bookings, let me tell you. We are on Twitter at InAll UK. We are on Facebook as InAll, and our Well, my email is jonathan@inall.org.uk. I think we've got a few minutes for questions if we can. Is that time? Yeah. So if you guys have got any questions that you'd like to ask, please feel free. Anyone brave enough to ask the first question? That's it. Yes.
What instigated the 5 months of this accelerated development? Was there something that was a trigger?
Yeah, I think to put my finger on it. I mean, I met somebody in my social life. And well, it's always to do with a woman, isn't it? always to do with it. And I met this person in my social life, and I developed feelings for her. And for me, just dealing with those strength of feelings, really for the first time in my life, I was all of a sudden having to deal with all this other stuff. You know, really sort of feeling and really caring to the level at which I did for this person. It was huge. And without a doubt, the emotions that those feelings triggered absolutely set that off. Without question with that, I mean, like I say, it's always to do with a woman, isn't it? So I'm sure a lot of guys in the room will understand where I'm coming from. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, guys, well, look, I am around. I'm going to be sticking around all day. If you have any questions at all, just come and approach me. I don't bite. And I'll be really, really happy to talk to you. Thank you very much.